What's up, guys? How's everybody doing? Give everyone a minute or two. It's 7:30 New York time on Thursday, March 18th. Thanks for tuning in. It's not a lot of people in the chat. Maybe this would be a light stream. Oh, nope, just I guess it just reset the counter for the amount of people in the chat. All right. Okay. What's going on, Cornholio? What's going on, Zero Colorado Sports Dude? I've always wanted to go to Colorado. It's a place I really want to visit. Logan, what's going on? Carlos Cifuentes, what's up, buddy? Okay, Geek Myth, what's up, man? How's it going? What evangel? Right away with the questions by 4 A's and a D. Hold on one sec. Let me just fix something on the screen. Move to top. Nope. Hold on. Move this over. There we go. Just had a weird setup on the chat. Okay. Let's see. All right. So present and correct. Hey, everyone. Mark Johnson, what's going on? Hang the hype. Share the wealth. Yeah. So we're going to talk about a few things. Just kind of a last minute stream. I said my wife is away with my sister and their friend. They rented a house out on the east end of where we live. And so I have the week. And that means I'll be doing random streams at times I normally wouldn't. Times where I'd normally be, being a good husband. Okay, so yeah, we could talk about yields, bonds, rather, and the effect that they had on the market. Crude oil today. Pretty big day for crude oil. One of the biggest down days that we've had since the March move, right? So big day across the board for commodities. Not a good day for BTC. A little bit of a scam pump, right? But I want to go over some levels. I want to get your opinion, right? What do you guys feel right now? So just to poll the group and proper introduction. What am I thinking? For anyone who's new, my name is Ryan, aka Kenner & Clark. My partner, Josh Rager. We are the co-founders or he is my co-founder. We are the founders of BlockRoots. We have a full educational platform where we have a course on market profile and order flow. We have an entire trading community. We have the newsletter. We are partners with Phemex. So as you can see, we have the Phemex logo, Phemex rather. I always pronounce that incorrectly. And I should know that because PHE, it's like Phoenix, right? So Phemex. But we are partners with Phemex. So if you haven't used their exchange, I see someone asked about it, how it performs against Bybit. Phemex has the fastest trading matching engine across the board. Out of all the exchanges in cryptocurrency, in the crypto markets, Phemex has the fastest matching engine. So 300,000 transactions per second. They are a growing exchange, which means that, the liquidity is not necessarily the same as the exchanges that lead by volume, right, and open interest. But that's how it works, right? You have to bring on new people, and by consistently growing, you improve the liquidity. But they do offer contracts, spot trading. They offer a yield program for USDT now, which is fantastic. You could earn 7 to 10% yield. So, we are partners with them for a reason. So hopefully that answers your question. There's a lot of opportunity that is going to be offered on that exchange. So I mean opportunity in terms of trading features, pairs, and products. Okay. All right. Yeah. Fee. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. Right. I was thinking PHE, but it's PHOENIX. All right. Winning on all fronts. Okay. Michael Horton feeling pretty bullish. Yeah. What's everyone's opinion right now? What is everyone's opinion of current price action, where we sit? Just want to get a feel. Yeah, Frog the Frog. Yeah, it's been a while, Frog the Frog. It's good to see you. And because you're an old friend and you haven't been here in a while, of course, or you haven't made yourself known, I'll absolutely take a look at Reef. Ranging down till April. Share the wealth. Ranging down till April. So I don't know if, for those of you that are not familiar with traditional markets, it's this old saying of sell in May, sell in May and go away. It's actually not the case in terms of equity markets, that May is a really poor performing month. June is a pretty poor performing month. I think June has, out of the 12 months, June is the third worst performing month of the last 20 years in equity markets. So considering we have a correlation now with traditional markets, kind of undeniable. I wonder how we will start. I wonder how we'll perform going into the summer. And now that taxes have been postponed in the United States, I wonder how that'll have an impact as well. I want to puke. I want to puke like every hour. You know what, geek? It might mean that you're overexposed, buddy, or maybe you're new. So I remember when I first came into crypto too, is a interesting type of volatility to get used to. You're trading a 100 vol asset. So at its worst, the S&P back in March 2020 was a 80 vol asset, right? So Bitcoin on average 100 vol asset. Okay. Range 59 rejected big time. Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I don't like the look of this. I hate when the narrative continues but the price doesn't, right? Pretty bad sign, in my opinion. Just my opinion, just my 2 cents. As a reminder, this is not financial advice. But the words and the developments, they can't do all the lifting. You actually have to have buyers that are consistently, that are reaching at higher prices. This might be a stream where I constantly itch my nose. Okay. I've been leverage trading BTC. I have motion sickness. Well, you know, a geek, that might be it. Maybe you should stick to spot trading. I use leverage, guys. I mean, people ask me all the time, what kind of leverage you use? I use the appropriate leverage to reflect my overall portfolio. Like, I actually don't really, when I'm taking positions on the exchanges, I'm really not using leverage, actually. My average leverage might be like 1 point something. It's very small. But I'm also trading with, you know, considerably large position sizes relative to, I guess, what is normal. So you don't really need to apply leverage to that value, and yeah, not to go too far down that route. Okay, how do you feel about today's violent drop in oil? Yeah, we'll go over that. Okay, gotta play to learn, right? Nope, geek, that's wrong, man. Don't play that way. There's different types of games you could play, right? You don't want to go full speed, all right? You want to play to learn, of course, but that means that you have small position sizes. You're just trading BTC. I think I know what it is, guys. I cooked. I picked up a fresh piece of wild tilapia. I cooked it, and I put and I was smearing olive oil and red pepper on the top of it, and I think I touched my nose with that. Disgusting stop hunt still bearish. Okay. What's your thoughts on core and staking locks up forever? I don't really know anything about it, but I'll take a look at it. We never hunted stops above 60.7. You know, you could continue to go on with the argument that that you have to hunt all stops, but then price would just keep going up. At some point, it's got to turn around, right? Not to say that point is now, but just the point that you can't leave a high untaken. Like, that implies an infinite amount of continued progress upwards. Because you take one high and then what? You got to take the next one. This nose thing is really bothering me. Risk, yeah. Okay, horrible price action, yeah. Okay, so cool. Let's take a look at the charts. Switch it over. We have a good amount of people in the chat. Let me just move the chat over. All right, and we are 1 sec. Sorry about this, guys. Okay. Everyone can still see me, right? I mean, not me, but yeah, we'll leave my head out of this one. How about that? So yeah, we're looking at right now, we're looking at CL, so crude oil, BTC. This actually should be the ES, so ES being E-mini futures, right? So just S&P futures, really, the E-mini contracts. And we're looking at today, which was obviously a pretty poor day across the board. I am drinking, this is a turmeric ginger club soda probiotic drink, so nothing exciting. So yeah, pretty red day across the board. This crude oil move was pretty bad. I don't want to keep this chart like this because it's a little noisy. This crude oil move was pretty shitty. I think it was around 7% down for the day. The range was larger, obviously, but I think it finished right around 7. So yeah, around 6.7, 6.79% down. So that's a really big day when you look at, you know, in terms of history going back to 2020. That is a very big day. All right, the largest day we had to downside was was back here in this was in September 8th. Now there's immediately when this happened, there wasn't an immediate news story. It's not like some kind of, Loomdart made a joke when I commented on this. He tweeted, he commented under my post, did a war just end or something? I think he said something along those lines. This is something that could be connected to the rest of commodities and traditional markets selling off for fears of inflation, which is kind of interesting because we'll look at this article right here. This is Bloomberg's "Nowhere to Hide from Inflation Fears as Commodities Join Rout." So when slight inflation is expected, right? Just to touch on this very briefly, when slight inflation is expected, people are going to be looking to, a lot of times you'll see that risk on assets, commodities will actually benefit, right? People are looking for yield. The idea of really high inflation, though, what that begins to stoke up is the idea of growth slowing, okay? Because you have to imagine that when we have a reopening, I think Novogratz said something like the reopening is going to be like the roaring 20s again. So when we have a reopening, okay, and we have a lot of money cycling throughout the economy, this is going to cause the economy to overheat, all right? Then this is going to lead to increased inflation. Now, what that means is that ultimately rates are going to have to be raised, okay? So rates being raised would obviously have a drastic effect on overall consumption, production. When you think about energy costs, how there's going to be less, for example, you could think about how crude oil wouldn't benefit from a lack of production and a lack of consumption, right? So the idea of much higher inflation brings into mind the idea that at some point their hand is going to essentially come down and those rates are going to be applied so that we could begin to cool the economy back down. This is kind of like an inevitability at this point with this type of Fed policy and these Fed actions that we've had. Keeping rates low, allowing inflation, this cannot go on forever. So for anyone who thinks the Fed is just going to maintain rates forever, they say 2022, but it might be the end of 2021. It might be 6 months from now. All right. So markets' expectations are that, yeah, rates are going to be kept down, but the implication of that is at some point they're going to be raised. So further out you look, you have to assume rates are going to be raised at some point. And yeah, Eric, yeah, markets are dictating rates right now, but when we have a reopening, the reopening is going to dictate how the Fed actually starts applying policy at that point. All right. Right now, you have to imagine like markets aren't overheating for a reason. Okay. So 2023, you could take what they say. And if you really want to just follow that to the T, that's fine. But clearly, this is an expectation of something else. All right. And all that matters is markets' expectations and how they perceive those future changes or what they think of the future, because that's going to dictate their actions now. Now, this obviously sent a little bit of a shockwave through the rest of the market. We saw the ES, we saw the DAC, we saw pretty much equities as a whole take a hit. We've seen that Bitcoin and equities have been correlated as of recently. You're going to see that Bitcoin is, Eric, absolutely. Too much liquidity. 100%, right? At some point, the fun has to stop. And Novogratz said, at some point, they're going to take the punch out of the punch bowl, right, at the party. Okay, it's going to be a dry party at some point. But, while it's taking place, while this kind of these incredible conditions are around, and you do have these incredible plays in crypto markets and traditional markets up until recently, you have to try to take it for all it's worth, right? You can't just sit here and be like, hey, at some point the party's going to be over. It's like, yeah, but like, why don't we just continue partying while we're still here, Why don't we try to make as much money as possible? Because we're going to be losing what? We'll lose 2% a year. We'll lose 2%, 2 to 3% a year either way. So yeah, anyway, I don't want to stay on traditional markets too much, but it is interesting. I'll start being negative about traditional markets as a whole when they start to say things like, when they start to get really positive after a big dip, right? Oh, things should improve in the coming week. When the market, when you see on CNBC after there's a big dip, what looks like a decent correction in equity markets, and they say just, oh, it'll improve in a very short amount of time. Okay, that's when I get worried. But there's a good amount of negativity in markets right now that kind of helps me think to the contrary. Let me just look at the chat real quick. Heard today from some professionals it's a rebalancing for today's drop. Overall market to begin hitting new highs. Yeah, I think Mark, as you said, or I think as you're getting at, this is not the point that everything turns. This is going to be, I think this trend is going to be sustained for some time, at least in the short term. In the interim, we'll have, short term sustained, okay, interim sort of intermediate term trend. I think we'll have a correction at some point, not too far from here, but then I think that will be relatively short-lived and then kind of onwards and upwards again. I think what happens is, and this is not something that I'm saying on my own, this is what happens when you listen to news cycle all morning, Financial Times and all that. You kind of forget where you heard something. But the way that it's said is the market's going to get used to, for example, yields being higher. It's going to get used to the changes that end up unfolding. And like all things, we'll just end up adapting, go through a certain period of, low growth, pessimism, markets correcting, and then again be hopefully merrily on our way. So this could affect BTC, right? Because if the perception is that rates are going to essentially in the future they're going to be increased, then the macro play around protection against inflation and all of that kind of goes out. At some point that begins to decay. And really the reason for being a cryptocurrency now is obviously because the plumbing is built there now, the institutions are coming, the infrastructure is being built up, and it's just going to be an asset class. That's the argument, I would say. It doesn't have to be this macro hedge anymore. That's how it could be romantic in the beginning and started, but at the end it just becomes something that is, like I say, casually, passively added to a normal portfolio, and when it's a fixed rate of supply, when it's a fixed supply like we have and it's very scarce, then it's going to go up over time. Okay. Okay. Can I ask why you've been selling your shroom? Why you've been selling your shroom while it's chilling? You would buy the dip on Twitter. I haven't. Yeah, Robert Wells, selling my shroom, balancing into shroom. Well, balancing from shroom to G swap at this. Excuse me, I said G swap. G swap at this point. Yeah, I plan on doing that. I had a very large portfolio in shroom, and I plan on having more of a even parity between the two. But I haven't even said anything about selling, and trust me, if you think that you know which one is my wallet, you definitely don't. BT is already an asset class. Yeah, it is definitely a macro asset at this point. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at BTC real quick. And Robert, you don't have to delete your comment. I don't know why you deleted it. It's a perfectly fine question. It's not based on the truth. All right. So, okay, would love to see your thoughts on for BTC tomorrow. Well, tomorrow, I'm not really necessarily certain of what'll happen tomorrow, but let's just take a look at what things look like today. So, in the process, in what we're seeing right now, this is starting to look, we know on the higher time frame that this is right now beginning to show a divergence in terms of momentum and in terms of just overall advance in price action. Okay, go ahead and share whatever wallet you think it is, Robert. You definitely don't know which my wallet is, and I definitely wouldn't be talking about GSwap until I filled a position. So right now we see that momentum is beginning to dissipate. So we have a loss of momentum on the way up. We look like, on the higher time frame, this looks like a sort of a 3-drive structure. We put in the high on the daily, broke out of the high, have this failure above the high, sort of chopping around that daily level. And right now what looks like beginning to put in a lower high within this initial local area. So this is starting to look to me like it wants to fall back into a range. In terms of something like this, when you break out of a high, you want to see that this acts as support, right? You want to see that the market is really bidding this up. This could very well be the dip that we're seeing in this reclaim of that daily level, and the daily already has, we have, let's see, this daily has, what do we have, 9 minutes left in this daily, so it looks like it's going to close above. I'm just not liking exactly what I'm seeing, considering this move up to 60K has been rejected again, a little bit shy of even approaching these highs. So a little bit of crowding maybe, right? We're seeing that this is top heavy. Okay, this individual day is top heavy. Oh, you know what I forgot to do in the beginning? I forgot to go over our friends at Genesis Volatility, so I'll go over that shortly. So I think that it is likely that we're going to have a little bit more chop, and this isn't going to be something that just begins to parabolically take off. Okay, so I'm not pessimistic. All right, I'm just kind of calling it like I see it. When I see something that is clear in terms of market structure. You have a clear level, all right, where you have a high, you would look for an expansion through this level. It's not like you're seeing that, you know, you have a slight spot premium at times, but every time towards the high, you see futures get overheated. Funding is somewhat normalized right now. So if we look at funding across the board, you know, this is maybe this though, the lack of funding at this high is also sort of a testament to the lack of momentum and lack of aggressiveness up the high. But funding, again, it's not anything extreme, but I think that I think it's more likely that at this point we pull back and we start to maybe move sideways at least a little bit more. All right. This should have acted as support. Okay, the idea that we're chopping around here just to me doesn't look that bullish in the short term. If we look at the individual structure today, right? So this test off of support, you get a really strong move up that wasn't necessarily, you know, fueled by a short squeeze, and then price just completely retraces the entire move. Okay, so if I'm looking for strength, I want to see that clearly price is being consistently bid up. So when it just starts falling back on itself, and again, we're chopping around this key level, to me, it looks like, you know, you have a little bit more time to maybe spend moving sideways, if anything. Okay, and we have some obvious levels of interaction. So it's not like we should just, you know, we shouldn't write this off in terms of the higher time frame. You know, we have this diagonal support. Okay, so this dynamic, rather it's not dynamic because it's kind of stayed the same. This diagonal support level, we are kind of chopping around at the previous weekly and daily high. I would just much rather see us sort of leave this area a little bit sooner rather than spend much time around here. Does this make sense? Just going to give you guys a second. I know there's a little bit of a lag in the chat. So what we don't want to get caught with is something that, and this very well could be, right, what we're setting up to do. Setting up to spend a little bit more time within this previous structure, all right, which wouldn't be the worst thing to occur, right? And just look at the chat. And then we'll go down to the lower time frames. You know, we still are very extended from some of the more important higher time frame tools. So if we look at something like the 50 period moving average, this is something that does concern me. Looking at this on the weekly, so 50 period is, this is, here we go, sorry. Looking at this on the daily, the 20 on the weekly is what I'm concerned with. Pretty far away from the 50 on the daily, and if we go to the weekly on the 20, this is the one that I'm a little bit more concerned with. They're kind of around the same area. Not excuse me, they're not exactly around the same area. This is back down around 37. Remember, this can meet up with us, but the further that we stay extended from this and just moving vertically, it's kind of like, it's a moving average, a way of using a moving average to see that we're overbought in a sense, right? And at some point, whether or not you have institutional adoption, you know, you're still going to have people that get in late and cause crowding up at the high. All right, when that crowding occurs, that's when things usually slow down like this. So if someone was going to use something like an RSI, and I joke around because you could see this with just, you know, with the naked eye, you could see that momentum is beginning to feel a little bit of stress, right? Just look back at the chat. Okay. All right, tested support, we go from here. BTC will have pullbacks. Wait, how do you draw supply and demand? Well, John, I focus mostly on horizontal support and resistance zones. Trend lines are good for showing the pace of advance, I guess. Pace of advance or pace of decline. I look at volume profile. I spend a lot of time looking at volume profile and TPO, though. So if we look at sort of what we're dealing with locally, your low volume levels are going to act typically like support and resistance. So low volume. So we do have, obviously we came down and successfully retested that 53, sort of 52 zone. And there's no real reason, again, there's no reason to be bearish on BTC, right? There's no reason to be bearish. I mean, as long as we are maintaining higher time frame market structure. So, I mean, this low, I'd say, is probably the most important low in this chart. And it just happens to be the most local right on the weekly. So if we look at, 45,475, so this low, right? Unless I said the other day on the stream, if we break below 48, then that's when I'll start getting concerned, or 49, excuse me. But then that really just sets up another play at the low. I just become concerned, obviously, because at that point, if you're approaching the low and you're approaching it, right from putting in this what looks like an obvious 3-drive structure, and you're approaching this low, at that point, I'm going to be a little bit concerned. Okay, you want to see that this clearly does a good job of holding any kind of level it's making on the way up. So best case scenario, that even if, let's say, this fails up here, we still have this meaty level in between here. If we look at this on the profile, you can see that this low volume level, this is where it begins to pick up again. So there's a ton of participation back in this area. This low volume level should act as support. So anywhere between, again, 53 down to 53, 52, this pocket should act as support. And if you start falling back within a previous range, you just have a higher probability of getting reaccepted and sort of falling back into the same behavior, which is, auctioning from low to high, right? But in this case, I'm not going to just assume that we're going to cover the entire range. I would say that, you move from point A to point B, which is right here, right? So right around 50K, sort of 49. That's just, there's a good amount of activity that took place there, and I would expect that this ledge would be a reasonable area to expect a bounce. So if we reaccept back below this low, I don't think that you just come all the way back down here. I think that if we came all the way back down here, right, in one straight clip, I would have a problem. Okay. If we reaccept below this low and we come back down here and we start finding support there, then it just reminds me of that. It just brings me back to the idea that this is potentially just going to range longer, right? So where do we close the daily? Should have just closed it. We close in the daily in 1 minute and 51 seconds. Okay. So, I mean, holding it so far, it's just not the most bullish candle. 1 and then 2, unable to approach this high again. Just looks like it's losing a little bit of steam. If you guys want me to look at any pairs, feel free to share them. I'm going to go back through the chat. Shroom or Ray. If I choose between Shroom or Ray, I'd say Shroom. I talked about in terms of the short term, and I guess and the long term, because Shroom has a lot more upside potential. And Ray, I think, is probably going to go through another accumulation zone similar to SRM, because I was going off of a lot of what was similar fractals to begin with. Mitch Ray says, do not long Bitcoin. I don't know who that is. 40K. I'm not really so sure about 40K. I want to think about all the levels before 40K. Where we sit before this morning, this is what my priority was. Okay. So we had, let's say excuse me, one sec. So this level right here was a long up to this high. Right? That was the way I was looking at it. Okay, if we broke above this level, and I went over this in the Blockroot stream, I was looking to take out this high. Now, we never made it all the way back up there, but we're still holding the daily level now, so I'm not going to write it off before we lose it. But again, if you start losing it, that's when I start looking at just the immediate levels. So if we start falling below this daily and we lose this level, okay, and you could just chop around longer. If we lose this level and we fall below, if you just look at where the area of interaction is right around, we're looking at 56.8, 57.2, just kind of this little pocket. If you fall below that level and take out that low and you don't immediately correct and get back above it, really you just fall into a gap, right? When you fall into a gap, very quickly do you just move right back down to the point where the gap began. So gap and really no activity that took place there. This was kind of a, this is a gap, right? So you fall back below there and you're probably covering that distance pretty quickly, which brings you back down to 55 area. Okay, let's see. The good thing is that funding is not really elevated, right? but at some point, that's not going to be the most useful thing, right? At some point, it won't, because I would say that at some point, the derivatives market is going to reflect the underlying spot market. And when we look at something as a whole, if it's losing momentum, where do you think that the funding would be the lowest, right? If you have a structure the entire way up that's bullish, but at the high you're losing momentum, well, that means across the board, right, whether it's spot or futures, that buyers are losing their willingness, or rather, there's less willingness to buy up here. So if anything, towards the high, you would see that maybe funding would drop off a little bit, because there wouldn't be as much aggressiveness on the futures exchange, because there wouldn't be that much capital at that point, right, at that extreme, to continually reach towards those highs. So I don't want to say like, oh, the low funding up here is super bullish. It might be because it's at that point it's hard to get overstretched. Okay. Yeah, I think after, I don't know about 2023. Yeah. Yes, Tom, I'm still in Shroom. Someone was saying that they have my wallet and that I sold my Shroom. I would gladly show my Shroom position right now, but I don't want to give away the rest of my wallet. But yes, I absolutely 100% still have Shroom. Like I said, I'm getting into G-Swap as well, because every time I share Shroom, everyone says that, I have to talk about G-Swap. I feel a little weird being in Shroom in the community. My partner Josh is heavy in both, so I want exposure to both. What happens if I'm wrong about Shroom and it's G-Swap that captures all the value? So yeah, but I absolutely have a position in Shroom, and a very large position at that. So I don't know what that moron was thinking, but he's not really here anymore, I guess, because he didn't follow up. Talking about loaning rate, pull back to healthy, my savings interest, what the fuck is it? Wow, 1% interest, good for you, man. Daves are saying otherwise. Okay, one sec. SR flip, if it holds, what do you think about significance of options expiry at the end of the month? Yeah, so we have a triple witching. The one thing that and I'm going to get into this because this is, the guys over at Genesis Vol, so Greg Magadini, we are working with them directly now. So I'll be featuring this platform. I think they're a great platform. I want to see them succeed. And, they have not only do they have an awesome options platform, and I said recently, this is sort of like the creme de la creme in terms of options analytics. It's extremely comprehensive. This, the one thing that worries me is this 40K strike. Still the highest by open interest, and that expiration is on the 26th. I'm pretty sure that's on the 26th. Let's move it out a little bit to see how that drops off. Yeah, it's on the 26th. So that when you have a large expiration like that, you have a really high open interest strike, typically you'll see that these levels kind of act like a gravity well, almost, I'll say. The price has a way of finding its way to them. Now you have a lot of upside call buying, so you have a lot of rather upside exposure sought in call buying outright. And if you look at something like the 20-30 delta skew, 25 delta skew, you could look at that as well. Skew.com has that. What you're seeing is that calls are trading much more richly or expensively compared to puts. So everyone is still seeking out that upside exposure. And that 40K strike kind of bothers me. The fact that it's, a lot of times you'll see that these strikes will act as like if you want a target almost, whether you're using structure, fibs, option strikes. I like it obviously better when it's to the upside, right? But in this case, we have a very popular expiry that is below us, or strike on that 26 expiry that is below us. So this, what else was I going to get into though? I forgot what I was going to say. Crap, I wanted to say, what I was saying was we're working directly with these guys, and I constantly get questions about options, and I'm kind of blocked out of trading the options I want to trade in crypto, which would be on Deribit because they have the best liquidity. And only recently did they change their KYC so that you can't trade at all unless you're KYC'd. But for those of you that are looking to learn about options, I just noticed that Genesis started doing this, and this is pretty new. Watch all of these options videos. Follow their YouTube. I mean, Greg does a really great job of explaining all of the things that you're going to see, or rather hear most frequently mentioned. So implied volatility, realized volatility, the Greeks, volatility term structure, the Black-Scholes model, right? So go check out their YouTube. Like I said, Josh and I don't really work with anybody besides Phemex. So when we decide to work with someone, it's because we think really highly of them. And obviously we want to see them succeed because they are, in my opinion, the best platform. They were nice enough to give me access, right? So I've mentioned this before. I said a while ago we didn't work with them, and now we just started working with them directly, where I'm going to be, featuring some of the new additions on their platform and so forth, and making educational content with them. Okay, so back to the chat. Sorry about that, guys. I meant to go over that in the beginning, but and that the website is genesisvolatility.io. So whenever you see me share stuff like the activity on weekdays, weekends, and that you see that chart where I'm looking at, we talk about the weekends being thinner, lighter activity, that's on this webpage. Okay, so I don't, the expiry is something that I am worried about because as open interest increases, as we see options gain more traction, and they will, it's going to have more of an impact on the market, especially when you think about how options writers and options hedgers will have an impact on the underlying. So it is a meme right now, hang the hype, but I think the gamma effects that are seen in traditional markets will start to be reflected in crypto also. Just there's not enough yet, but it absolutely will. As the crypto markets mature, you could bet that the options market will dwarf the spot market. Okay. CB premium, $30 above max. What level? So PJW, that's a good question. The premium you have to normalize, right? So a $30 premium at $15,000 and a $30 premium at $60,000. It's at 60, it's like very, it's negligible, right? The markets are in line. If it was a $100 premium, $150 premium, that'd be a different story. At the highs, I don't know what to make of it. Like, I'll tell you what, I was looking at this high and leading up to it after the dump. And you could see that what this is right here, let me get the RSI off the chart because I never bother with RSI ever. If we look at this chart right here, this is just Bybit, Coinbase Delta. So difference between Bybit and Coinbase. And this is when Bybit is trading at a premium. This is when it's trading at a discount. So this is your spot premium right here. All right. Throughout the entirety of this whole area up here, all right, we could see that, let me move this up a little bit. Okay, we could see that it was very futures heavy, right? Same situation over here. And the better portion of the structure down here, we remember there was a really strong spot presence down here, especially from here on, all right, at these lows, which is where you would want to see. You want to see the spot market defend the lows. I don't know if I'm going to give much credence to that premium on spot right now, honestly. Like I said, for reasons that the markets might be more in line now because you have less aggressiveness on the futures exchange. Even though you have aggressiveness at the highs, it's starting to maybe decrease. And then at that point, it becomes easier to keep the markets in line. Let's take a look at this chart real quick. Just in terms of recent activity. Pull the TPO open. So if I'm looking at just today's structure, all right, we had nice trending day and led to another. I have to remember that the drawing tool turns off when I use this EXO platform. We have a really nice trending day, build a base down here, make a move up, and then now we have another balanced day. And the one thing that stands out about this structure is that we're now trading below where most of the activity came in. So we spent the most amount of time up here. Right, so this is your point of control, and you know how this looked. If I put the candlestick on it, you'll see that, that was the range at the high, right? So we spent the most amount of time right here, all right? But the most amount of volume was transacted down at the low. Now, when you have most of the volume transacted down at the low and you have this sort of balanced structure, obviously you want to be sitting above where the activity came in, because then what you're looking at is a structure that's top heavy, right? Just think about it like this. If you're this little guy down here, what do you want to have to try to catch? Something that's built like this, or something that is built like this. I would say that I would definitely rather catch the latter. So when you have a structure where most of the volume is sitting above you, it puts you in poor positioning in the short term. Now, if most of the volume was above us, but it was at the high, that would be a different story. This is not necessarily the case, right? We are actually opening up. We closed outside of value. Excuse me. So we closed already. But why is my, there we go. We want to see that at least we start reclaiming that point of control above 58. 58, where most of the activity now has sort of been isolated to. And then what we're looking at in the short term, I think you could expect this, honestly, regardless of what this does on the high time frame. So you have a pretty balanced day, right? So a pretty nice distribution. It's a normal distribution, I would say. I don't get hung up on TPO day types. That's kind of old school shit. You have trending days, you have non-trending days, you have balanced days, and some variation. But we opened up outside of, we close outside of value, right? So that happens in a 24-hour market. There's a Dalton rule in TPOs which say that you have an 80% chance. The probability is 80% that if you close two TPOs back inside of value after closing outside of value, that you're going to rotate through from low to high or high to low if it was from the opposite direction. So in Bitcoin, it's around 76%. Now in crypto, you're going to open up outside of value if you close outside of value. There's no overnight, right? Traditional markets obviously have overnight, you have cash session. So we clearly closed outside of value. So now if we regain acceptance above 50, I would say, in this case, I'd rather isolate the point of control and not just the value area low. If we reaccept above 58, I would see us going all the way back up to 59, right? Just kind of a pure play on reacceptance into value. But that's if, right? Whereas we have another value area where it was pretty evenly distributed before the trending move out. So we had an open, market rotates lower, balances out, and then we have a move up. But this would be a really friendly area in terms of reaccepting price. So again, this is a gap that we see, all right? And if we have a move, more locally rather within the last 2 days, not necessarily a gap, but this little level right here, excuse me, 56,272 area, we'll combine these 2 days. I'm getting used to using the new EXO, so just bear with me. I'm going to do that thing where I talk ahead of the motion in terms of getting myself set up. Okay. So this level right here, forgot that doesn't work. This value area high of the previous day, right around 56, we'll say. If instead we start breaking down and we fall back within here, we would expect probably to hit back off of 55.5 and then maybe make our way down to 54.5. Okay, it would be an accommodating structure to fall back into. Value was determined there before. It would be easy to accept back there once again. And I'll just put the session on this so you can see what it looks like on your trading view if you don't have those charts on EXO, or rather if you don't have EXO at all. One sec. Okay, here we go. So we're looking at ultimately this level right here, and this is your gap, right? You have open, market rotates lower, builds a base, rips up, but there's not really much that takes place within this area. So this is a little air pocket. And if we start pressing into this, you don't see an immediate response, you're probably just, again, you're traveling back down to the value area low yesterday at that point of control. So I could see, if we start falling back below, again, right around 56.5, 56, I could see us back down to 54.5. So these are good opportunities on the lower time frames in terms of like short-term momentum scalps. Not momentum scalps, but short-term intraday sort of momentum plays. Does anyone have any questions on BTC? And if we just if we look at where most of the risk has been added, now just like let's say from this high, so we'll put on our anchored VWAP. So March 18th, and then right from, we'll say where the risk is added at, okay. So we're sitting below where most of the risk has been put on, obviously. And I'll actually move it back a little bit so we incorporate pre-breakout. So we're in a position, obviously, where most of the risk is sitting above us. And that means that it's comfortable, right? If you're short, you know, if you're short anywhere up here, it should go without saying you're sitting in, you're feeling okay, right? So the pressure point, it's above, I mean, it's at least above 58, okay? And then at that point, it's not like you have to cross that VWAP to make it obvious. All you need to do is you have this low right here. If you have a stab into this low and then you're recovering and you have this sort of under-over pattern, well then, yeah, you're probably going to hunt up at this high again. All right, let's see. Let me look at the charts. Thanks for the answer. Elam climbing Doge chart. Yeah, I don't care about Doge, honestly. Yeah, I had Reef and then I've gotten rid of it. Okay. Keen on getting thinking of getting in a position G-swap next to Shroom. Yeah, it was kind of, it felt like sacrosanct, honestly, to not have a position in it when I don't want to say shilling Shroom, but constantly talking about Shroom, and meanwhile G-swap is directly related to it. I think it was bothering some people in the Shroom community. Okay, Raver Shroom, or dot. Okay, see the future Bitcoin will go to the moon. Hmm. 57373. I don't know what that is. When you talk about price. All right. New EXO is great, yeah. Yeah, this is looking pretty shitty right now, right? I mean, we still see though. I mean, this is spot, and if we look at something like Bybit, and the reason I look at Bybit is because that's where the offside traders are. I'll just say that much. That's where most of the offside positioning takes place. I mean, and Bybit is trading slightly at a discount to Coinbase, but you know, going back here, that was the same condition over here also, and I was looking at that and thinking, well, you have this 1, 2, 3 structure, and that's not that strong of a 3 drive structure at all, but it looked like this might be your correction, right? And you had what was let me just zoom out, make sure that we're talking about the right thing. Oh no, that was, excuse me, that was back here. That was this little dump recently. So this structure right here, it looked like maybe this was the short-term dip below the daily, and it would maybe find support and rip up. And one of the things that I also was paying attention to was, yeah, you know, Coinbase is trading at such a premium, that's super bullish, but then price didn't respond positively. So, you know, maybe at some point it gets used to create the illusion, right? Okay. All right, Eric, what do you mean by where are you going with this? Was there something I missed? All right. So I'll look at Reef. Yeah, so I mean we have a new, yeah, so new open today. Right out of the gate, like you said. I mean, we're not even we're a few minutes into the day. But right from the open, there's a good amount of directional conviction, that's for sure. Just one-sided right now. There's your open right there at 57.6, and you know, right now we're trading about a $900 difference. So let's look at Reef though. Yeah, I mean, this is not, this was unfortunately caught up in a bit of drama with FTX and not one to take sides. It looks like both sides have if you were a fan of either, you're still going to walk out as still a fan of the other, still a fan of them, and keeping side with FTX or Reef. But, you know, I know a lot of people that are still really bullish on Reef. Right now, sort of a double top. I'm not really that bullish on a lot of alts right now. I think that they're going to, they put in really strong moves, and I think that we're going to, if Bitcoin has a sideways range that forms, I think that could be friendly, but a lot of alts look like pretty overbought to me too, and you know, they could continue to be, but it's just, it looks like they're not only overbought, but they have lost a little bit of their momentum. Let's see some fundings across the board with the alts. Yeah, and it's like we still have pretty positive funding across the board. I don't even see one really negative print. I would love to get involved with some really of the stronger pairs if funding was a lot more compressed and even negative. So, I mean, Reef, you have this double top. If we look at this on the daily, you would have ultimately wanted to have seen that this level, if this failure was going to lead to anything. Yeah, I don't know, guys. Having some trouble.